that's dried out, or we'll see if it's called dry because it still has some green in it. Thank you very much. Yesterday we learned that there's a certain size. There's a certain size for a etrog. There's a machlokas. What's the size of an etrog? If it's the size of a egg, so one opinion said that the minimum size of an etrog has to be the size of a egg, and one opinion said that the minimum size of an etrog is a walnut. Right? There's two different opinions in the Gemara. What is the minimum size of an etrog? So there's a minimum, meaning if there's a little etrog root and it's so small, and the halacha follows the opinion that it has to be the minimum size of an egg. Looks like Michael Dehan is trying to join us. Let's see if we can get Michael in. Okay, so now the question is, the Gemara is now going to talk about the maximum size of an etrog. What is the maximum size of an etrog? So we have a machloka. So that's where we're starting today. We want to say hello to Mike. Mike, it's been a long time. We haven't seen you.
Good morning, Rabbi. It's been a while. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Adam, you sent to the group that we're on. I sent to the group that we're on. So we're on the Gemara in the Gemara Sukkah. One of our early founders of the class, Michael Dehan, is on. He's maybe from Florida. Maybe he lives in Florida now. So the Gemara says that there is a machlokas. What is the minimum size of an etrog? And the Gemara says that the machloket, the Gemara understood that the argument is, one opinion said that if it's too small, it's not considered an etrog. It's not considered a fruit. The fruit is not there yet because it's too small. You won't even call it you don't call it that. If it's so premature, it's not it. It's not the Coke Classic, so to speak. It's not it. So therefore, that's the reason why that etrog wouldn't work. Then the Gemara, now what is the Gemara trying to figure out? The Gemara is trying to figure out regarding Rabbi Yehuda. Because the Gemara said that Rabbi Yehuda does not require an etrog to be beautiful, right? We said that he holds that an etrog could be dried. If you have an etrog and it's dried, now would he say that this type of etrog would be kosher? First of all, this might be not even the size of an egg already. It might be invalid because it's too small. But let's say this would be bigger. Some of them, you see some of that smoking food has started larger. It's definitely started larger than it is now. That's right. But if an etrog is dried out, let's say it was no moisture, as the Shulchan Aruch translates, there was no moisture in the etrog. That's called dried out. You would, like we spoke yesterday about the test, they would take a needle and place a needle, let's say, going from the top of the etrog, according to one opinion, it's the side of the etrog, the wall of the etrog, not to put the needle through the etrog. They put the needle and to see if any moisture comes up on the needle, on the thread, right? That's what we said yesterday. And that there, so we said that, and yet Rabbi Yehuda says if it's dried out to that point, it's still kosher. That's what he would do. Now, why the Gemara says? Because he doesn't hold that an etrog is different than any other mitzvah in that respect of beauty. That's what it would seem like he would hold. Meaning to say, every mitzvah, we said, there's a concept called beautifying a mitzvah. Right? You have a beautiful mezuzah. You have a beautiful talit, beautiful tzitzit. That's the beautification of the mitzvah. If you don't have beautiful tzitzit, tzitzits are old. They turn yellow. The talit is yellow. You still get credit for the mitzvah. You just didn't do the mitzvah in the most beautiful fashion. So the question here is, and I'll give you another example. You have matzah, real dry, old, I would say old matzah. I would think you can fill the mitzvah of matzah with old matzah. I don't know that there's any, Mr. Haber, is there any You ever hear there's a problem that the Torah, the requirement of matzah will say you can't use old matzah? Technically, use old matzah. It might not be the nice way to do it. It might not have the nice taste. And therefore, you're not beautifying the mitzvah if you use old matzah. Right? So a guy would use last year's shmura matzah. Would he fulfill his mitzvah of shmura matzah? I would say yes. I don't think there's any pasuk that says you can't use old matzah. But you did not fulfill the mitzvah of beautifying a mitzvah. Because using old matzah, which is maybe stale or doesn't have such good taste, it's not that you're doing a mitzvah not in the proper way. So the question, Rabbi Yehuda seems to hold that etrog is the same thing. Regarding beauty, he does not, if he can hold that an etrog that's dry is kosher, so he holds there's no special, he doesn't hold of this idea of hadar. He doesn't hold the idea of this beautification of the etrog. Now, the obvious question the Gemara is going to say is, how can't he hold? There's a pasuk that says 3/8 hadar. So we're going to see he translates the word hadar not as beautiful, but he's going to have a different translation of what that word hadar means. That's what we're going to see, and therefore that's why he could hold that an etrog could be dry. Technically, you should be able to fulfill your obligation of etrog with a dry etrog. Okay, so now the Gemara wants to say that what we find that he says when it comes to handling the size of an etrog, the size of an etrog, Rabbi Yehuda goes on record and he says there's a certain maximum size on an etrog, and if the etrog is too big, we're going to see what his size is. That will invalidate it as an etrog. You can't take this humongous etrog. And sometimes when something is so big, it's like out of place. It doesn't look beautiful. So we're going to talk about the holding in a minute, as Mr. Batesh is talking about. And so the Gemara is thinking that it looked more. Welcome back, Simon. The Gemara is thinking that maybe the problem is lack of beauty. So big, it's abnormally big. And therefore, since it's a lack of beauty, and therefore we see that Yehuda is also concerned for beauty by an etrog. So that's the Gemara's challenge to what we said we said a few moments ago. That we said Rabbi Yehuda says a dried etrog is fine. If you say a dried etrog is fine, that means you're not concerned for beauty. And yet he says he's concerned for. It seems like he's concerned for beauty because he says we have a problem if the etrog is too big. Look at the case. Here's the Gemara on 31b2. On the bottom, the first column, Tashma, the bottom, the last line, Tashma. The Gemara says, Tashma, Ubegadol, how large, what is the maximum size for an etrog? Ubegadal, Kedei sheyachaz shnayim biyoda achad. It has to be that you could be able to hold two of these etrogim with one hand, meaning this etrog I could hold with one hand. I could have two of these etrog with one hand. The etrog that I have could be as long as I am capable of holding two of these in one hand. If I can't hold two of them in one hand, then it's a sign that it's too big. I have to be able to hold two in one hand. Right, those huge ones like those huge Taimani or Yemenite etrogim, right? You can't hold two of those in one hand. But this opinion, but very good. So the first opinion is that you have to be able to hold two in one hand. Divi Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi argues. Rabbi Yossi even like Simon says, even if you have to have two hands to hold one. Right. So his opinion would seem to hold that you could be able to hold one. You could be able to do the mitzvah by taking it one right after the other. You take this opinion would hold if you can have two, like the Simon said, if you need two hands to hold one one etrog. So what about the lulav and the etrog? So that means the Torah says, take a lulav, etrog, hadas maravot. So he took the lulav, and then a moment later he picked up the etrog. That's what this opinion would seem to hold, that you would be able to fulfill the mitzvah that way. So that's the opinion. Rabbi Yossi, it can be so large. There's no, which seems to say there's no size maximum on the etrog, according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to the second opinion, Rabbi Yehuda says there is a maximum, and the Gemara is thinking because it's a lack of beauty if it's too big. Yes. Right. So obviously we're not agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Very good. So the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason Rabbi Yehuda's stringency that he says that the etrog can't be too large, that you can't hold, you have to be able to hold two of them in one hand. And if you can't hold two of them in one hand, it's no good. What's the reason? So he says, so the Gemara says it's not big. So the Gemara is thinking because he doesn't see, because he holds it has to be beautiful. So the Gemara says, look. The Gemara says, Kiva de Amar Rabba. Rabba said the following halacha. What did Rabba say? Well, Rabba said, Lulav biyamin. The lulav, there's a specific way you hold the lulav. It's not arbitrary. The lulav you could put it on your right hand, put it in the left hand. He says lulav is supposed to go in the right hand. Lulav has 3 minim, has 3 species. It's the winner in quantity. Therefore, the lulav is in one hand, is in the right hand. And we even make the bracha. Lulav. We don't say al-tilat etrog. The lulav and because the lulav has the hadassim and the aravot, so we emphasize that could be one understanding of why we emphasize the lulav. So the lulav is in the right hand, and the etrog is in the left hand. And like we said, that when you do a mitzvah with the right hand represents strength, and that's the more chashuv, that's the more important, and therefore you're supposed to do the mitzvah, take the lulav, which since the lulav has the hadassim and the ravas, 3 out of the 4 species, and you need all 4 species to fill the mitzvah. It's not independent of each other. So therefore, you take the lulav in your right hand. You know, when you say a bracha on food, which hand do you hold the food in? You hold the food in your right hand, because that is, you're giving more honor. That is, you're doing it with strength, through the mitzvah with strength. You know, it's brought down in the Yalkut Yosef, when you take off your tefillin. Which hand should you use to take off your tefillin? When you take off your shalosh, you use your weaker hand. If you're a righty, right? I'm a righty. How do I take off my shalosh? I use my left hand. He says it's better to do it that way, because you're showing when you're moving away from a mitzvah, like you're not supposed to run out of a synagogue. You're not supposed to walk fast out of a shul. You walk fast to shul. You walk slow out of shul. When you're leaving a mitzvah, right, Mike? You leave a mitzvah softly. You don't want to leave a mitzvah with strength. Therefore, the best way to take off your tefillin is to take off your tefillin with your. It could be we could use the wire just in case. So the wire for the. You take off the tefillin with. It's better take off with the left hand. And if you're a lefty, then you take off your tefillin with your right hand, because you want to do it with your. You're going away from a mitzvah. You go away from a mitzvah. So like they say, we do the mitzvah tzedakah, so it's better to give the tzedakah with your right hand. You're doing if you're a righty, it would see, it would better. You should definitely do it with your right hand. What? So a lefty, it's very interesting in halacha by certain things by a lefty, how they do certain things by the Ashkenazim. A lot of times they'll treat that, that if you're a lefty, they'll hold the food in the left hand when they'll say a bracha, and even by the lulav, they'll hold the lulav. The lefty would hold the lulav in his left hand. The Sfardim might hold the lulav. The lefty hold it in the right hand. The lulav. So the Sfardim have there's a lot of more focus on the right, even in many cases, even when you're a lefty. Of course, your tefillin is. Everybody agrees your tefillin's on your weaker your weaker hand. So everyone agrees that a lefty will put on his tefillin on his right hand, because there the Torah emphasizes yad v'hoilos al yadcha, and yadcha, the Gemara says, is a yad keha, your weaker hand. So therefore, that is unanimous. Your tefillin goes on your weaker hand. But many of the other things, what does a lefty do when he does certain mitzvot? Does he use his right hand or his left hand? That's subject to discussion in the halacha. Like we just pointed out, a very interesting difference between the Sfardim and Ashkenazim regarding which hand the lefty would hold the lulav. So Ralph is a lefty; he holds the lulav in his right hand, and many Ashkenazim will hold their lulav if he's a lefty, will hold in his left hand. Okay, now you got it. You'll see if you see it. Now you're going to see that, Ralph. Etrog represents the heart, some explain. So that's to us. So therefore, maybe it's a sign of softness. Maybe the heart being more to the left, the right is a little more stronger. Maybe it's like you're supposed to have a leiv basar, supposed to have a soft heart. Too many people have they're tough. And maybe, there's a pasuk that I'm going to give you a leiv basar. A leiv, instead of having I'm going to remove that heart of stone, which may be symbolic of the right. So maybe that's why perhaps Hashem made the heart on the left, more towards the left. So the Gemara says, Kiva the Amar Rabba lulav biyamin ve'etrog b'smol, since the lulav is in the right and the etrog is in the left, zimnan de mechalfile. Sometimes a person, when you pick it up, someone will hand you a lulav and someone will hand you an etrog. It's possible that instead of handing it to you in your right hand, the lulav, you took the lulav by mistake in your left hand, and your etrog in your right hand. And now you got to switch your hands to be able to place it right. That I have the lulav in my right hand. Now, if I can hold both in one hand, so then when I make the switch, it'll be easy for me to make the switch. Because to switch it, at one point I'm going to hold both in one hand when I switch. Right? If I want to switch this to this, so that usually I'm going to hold at one point. If I hold this and this, I have this like this. So there's a chance that at a certain point I'm going to hold both. I'm going to, and then I'll put the lulav here, and then I'll take this, right? So if I can't hold both in one hand, what will happen? It's going to what? The one is going to drop. And it's going to drop, and it can invalidate the etrog. So therefore, in order to make sure that if I have the situation that I might need to switch my hands and to put the lulav in the proper hand and the etrog in the other hand, that I will be able to hold both and not drop it. So therefore, he says, that's why if the etrog is going to be too big, too large, then it will make trouble and will cause you to what you wouldn't be able. You might come to drop it. So therefore, that's why he says the etrog it has to be that you're able to hold. If you're able to hold two etrogim in one hand, then you're definitely be able to hold the lulav and the etrog, and therefore you're not going to in one hand. If you're going to hold the two etrogim, you're going to be able to hold the lulav and etrog, and therefore you will not come to drop one and invalidate, drop the etrog and invalidate it. So that's the reason, not because of hadar. The Gemara says it's not because he holds it has to be beautiful. Rather, it's because he holds, right, Mike? He holds that you have to be able to make the switch, a very smooth switch, without possibly dropping one. Right, that's a good point. But they might not have had, they didn't have that at this time of the Gemara. I believe they would have prayed most probably by heart. They didn't. It wasn't that they had a sitter in their hand. So the Gemara continues. So that's what the Gemara says. So you have to turn it around, and it's going to come to invalidate it if it falls to the ground, because maybe a hole will happen, and the thing that for us we know, if an etrog grows with a pitim, and if it falls on the floor, there's a good chance that the pitim will fall off, and then we get into invalidate. For sure, that will invalidate that would invalidate the lulav on the first day of the holiday, and then we'll see discussion. What's the law about? Would that invalidate if the pitum falls off? Is it invalidated anytime during the holiday the pitum falls off, or is it specific for the first day, first 2 days? So that's a matter of discussion in the halacha. But the first day the pitum falls off, that would definitely would invalidate it, right? So therefore, we have to make sure that it shouldn't come to fall. So now the Gemara asks the obvious question on 31b. Ella, Rabbi Yehuda Ktiv Hadar. What's going on? How can Rabbi Yehuda say that the etrog does not have to be Hadar, doesn't have to be beautiful, it can be dried out? There's a pasuk in the Torah. The pasuk says pre-8 Hadar. So the Gemara says, Hahu, he translates Hadar, the word dira, right? Dira is an apartment, right? You go into your dira, you go into your apartment. Dira is the dar, to live. So he says hadar. The Torah is hinting to you what is this type of fruit that I'm asking you to take? What is this pre-8? This fruit of a tree that I'm asking you to take? It's a pre-8 hadar that lives on the tree. It can live from 1 year to the other year and stay on the tree. Most fruits, after a while, after the year, they start falling off the tree. Seasonal, it falls off the tree. But the uniqueness of the etrog is what? Stays on the tree. And that hadar, that it stays on, that's what the pasuk is telling you. I want you to take the pre-8 hadar. The pre-8, the fruit of the tree that remains on the tree. That's the fruit that lives on the tree, that stays on the tree. Who's that? That's the etrog. Because there's a famous, because according to the other interpretation, the Torah did not identify what is this beautiful fruit. If you translate hadar, beautiful fruit, take a fruit of a tree that's beautiful. What is that? Maybe there's a lot of beautiful fruits. So we need to have the halacha, the Moshe Sinai, the tradition to tell us what is the pasuk referring to. An etrog, specifically, you can't take a pomegranate. Might be a beautiful fruit, nice, large, round. You can't take it. But when according to this, the Torah is clearly identifying the fruit. Just like when the Torah says kapot tamarim, arvei nachal, eitz avot, where it identifies eitz avot. We're going to see also the hadassim. It's describing a certain braiding. The braid, what it looks like. At least it's limiting. It's giving some clarification, some hints to what we're talking about. But a pre-8 hadar, which means beautiful, doesn't tell us what it is at all. Doesn't identify. There's a lot of beautiful fruits. But this shot's saying it means that it lives on the tree. And I'm going to share a chidush. Mr. Haber, I'm going to share a chidush. Here's a chidush. Our good friend Max over here was talking about the symbolization, the symbol of the etrog of the heart. And I want to say, what is this idea, this uniqueness that Hashem says, good morning, Aaron, that God says, I want you to take a fruit that's etrog, which is unique. And what's the unique character traits of an etrog? What is one of the unique characteristics of an etrog? That it remains on the tree even 2 to 3 years, which is in contrast to all the other types of fruits that every year when they ripen, they fall off the tree. When they fall off the tree, why is this the type of fruit that Hashem wants us to take on Sukkot? So, Michael, you're going to be hearing a chidush. So here's the chidush. Sukkot comes right after the holiday of what? Yom Kippur. We all know what is the commentaries discuss why is Sukkot right after Yom Kippur. It's pretty much really there's no time pretty much between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. It's like the Torah gave you enough time to build the sukkah, get the 4 species, get ready for the Yom Tov. Meaning to say, if it would be possible to go from the day after Sukkot, Yom Kippur, to go to Sukkot, technically, the Torah would have told you, the day after Yom Kippur, go to the sukkah. But the Torah got to give you a little time to get ready between Yom Kippur to get the sukkah ready. So it gives you a little time because you've been focused on Yom Kippur. Then you got to focus on Sukkot. It's such a thing that the Gemara says, that the Midrash says that Lakachtem lachem b'yom harishon, you take for yourself on the first day, that the first day of Sukkot is the first time of Cheshbon Avonot. Now we start our calculation of sins. Meaning, what do you mean? It's started because between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, there's no time to sin. You have to have time to sin. You're so busy. Now, starting on Sukkot, now we have time to sin. So now we start counting. But what's the idea that Hashem gives Sukkah following Yom Kippur? So one idea is you need to preserve the level of achievement, of accomplishment that you reached on Yom Kippur. Everybody reaches, the Jewish community reaches an amazing height, right, Aaron? On Yom Kippur, you reached a great height. You fasted the whole day, you did tshuva, you repented. It was a 10-day process that started from Rosh Hashanah. And then now we have this process that we have starting from Rosh Chodesh Elul. So it's been a big, you've been working hard from Rosh Chodesh Elul for 40 days to reach this level. But now what's the key? Key is to stay there. The key is to remain on that level. Like a guy gets married and you treat your wife so nicely. The key is to continuously treat your wife that way. Not just you reach that point and now it's going down the way you treat. So maybe that's the lesson. Hashem says, take the fruit that remains, that stays, that lives on, that doesn't fall off, that remains. And maybe that's the idea. You gotta remain in that level that you reached. Don't drop off. That's the idea, perhaps. That's the chiddush that's coming to the world today. That's the idea of, you like it, Max? That's the idea of the etrog. When you look at an etrog fruit, this is a little dried out etrog fruit. You're supposed to be thinking, this is a fruit that stays on the tree. It stays up there. It stays on the tree. We got to stay up there. We got to stay high in that level that we reach. Okay, that's the chiddush. Okay, so that's the Gemara says. What do you say, Michael?
Chazak, beautiful.
Thank you very much. And that's really, they say on the posuk, Mi aleh v'Hashem, who goes up the mountain of Hashem, but mi yakum b'dvakochu, who remains there. And that's the key. It's not just, it's one level to go up. The second level is to remain. So the Gemara says, Shel hashira v'shel hanidachat. The Mishnah stated that a lulav that came from an Asherah tree. An Asherah tree is a tree that they would worship. They worshipped as avodah zarah. Maybe they looked at this tree. Maybe it's a strong tree. Maybe it's a leafy tree. Maybe it's, and they would worship it as avodah zarah. There was a time period that people had a great desire to worship idols, to worship the sun, the moon, and statues. They make it into a god. We don't understand that type of desire because the rabbis prayed for Hashem to remove that desire of idolatry from the world. So therefore, that's why worshiping idols is not a common problem today. But if it was an Asherah tree, if it was a lulav that came from that tree, now even though you're not using it, as avodah zarah, but a mitzvah is not personal benefit. I'm not benefiting. It's not that I'm using it for personal use. I'm using it for a mitzvah. So if a guy wants to use the avodah zarah lulav for a mitzvah, so we're going to say the Mishnah says it's not kosher. It's invalid, right? You don't get credit. You don't get credit for the mitzvah of lulav if you use a lulav that's from that was used for avodah zarah. Similarly, the Mishnah stated, shel hashera. It says if it was from the Mishnah says for ir hanidachat. Ir hanidachat is the city where most of the people of the city, the majority of the city go off the derech. Majority of the city worship idols. So you got all those people that worship the idols have to be killed, and all the movable items in town have to be burnt. They take all the movable items in town. To see obviously more of the details of the halacha. Anything that was detached from anything that came off a tree, any food products, all those things. I would understand that all those things would be brought to the center of town and burnt. And so the Gemara says, so the Gemara first is focusing on the Asherah tree. You're telling me it's pasul. V'amar Rava. But Rava says, lulav shel avodah zarah. If let's say if you have a lulav that was used, let's say the palm branch was used to clean, it was used to clean the floor that's in front of the avodah zarah, or they served the avodah zarah using this lulav. So it seems that a lulav of avodah zarah, they're not translating. They're translating a lulav of avodah zarah as it was used to serve idols. It was to clean the floor for the service of the avodah zarah, or they would maybe let's say if they waved the lulav in a way of serving the idol, towards the idol or something. So lo yito, you cannot take such a thing. It's disgusting to take such a thing for the mitzvah. Imagine a person takes a lulav that's used to wave in front of avodah zarah. Good morning. Or lulav to use to clean the floor of the idols of the floor of the church, and you're going to use that for a mitzvah. Lito. But in natal, but if you took it kosher, it says after the fact, even though you're not allowed to have benefit from such an item because it was used for idol worship, but since a mitzvah is not, it's not that you're getting personal benefit. It's not that you're getting, so therefore, technically you got credit. You did the mitzvah of the lulav. And Rashi has a beautiful idea that mitzvot is not a physical concept that I'm doing. It's not like I'm having a physical pleasure like other things. It's like a person's working for his master. So therefore, it's like maybe you call it a spiritual pleasure I had. You put on your tefillin, you're getting a spiritual pleasure. It's not a physical pleasure that you had. It wasn't the mitzvah, and even though you're going to get a lot of reward, but it's not a physical pleasure, and so therefore you get credit for the mitzvah. So how could the Mishnah? But the Mishnah stated that if the lulav came from this tree, from this Asherah tree, this tree that they worship idols, it says that if you use that for the mitzvah of lulav, it says you don't get credit. So we have an apparent contradiction. One place it says, "Good morning, Gary." One place it says if you take a lulav that they use to sweep this floor in front of the idols, you're not allowed to take it. But if you did it, you get credit for the mitzvah. And one place it says that the lulav that comes from this Asherah tree, if you used it, you cannot fulfill the mitzvah. So a lulav from avodah zarah, can you get the credit with the mitzvah after the fact or not? Seems contradictory. So the Gemara says it depends where the lulav came from. The Asherah tree, the Gemara says, "Hacha ba'Asherah de Moshe Astina." These Asherah trees that were in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, these trees that the people used to worship in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, meaning the time the Jews, if these trees were there from the time the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael. So if you have a tree here that was from the time that the Jews entered Eretz Yisrael, and this is the Asherah tree, and this is the original trees that the Goyim that were in Israel, they worship these these trees. Like the Torah says, you got to get rid of the avodah zarah. When you come to the land of Israel, you got to get rid of avodah zarah. But when it talks about the Asherah, it says v'asherehem tisefun be'esh. So the Torah was very specific about what do you need to do to these trees. You have to go ahead and burn it. So since you have to burn these trees, so the ketute michta shiurei, something that is forbidden to have benefit and standing to be burnt, we will treat it as if it's burnt right now. So if this pair of glasses was a lulav, by the way, let's use it, let's put it. This lulav, if it was from an Asherah tree, it has to be burnt. So if it has to be burnt, we look at the lulav that's going to be burnt as if it's already burnt. It's a done deal. The deal is we don't look at it. It's like it's happening. Like, you know what you say? The guy who's going to the electric chair, he's a dead man, but he's not dead yet, right? Gary, they'll call him a dead. That guy, they'll call him a dead man because they're going to kill him. They're going to hang him. Whatever they're going to do to the guy. So this lulav, if it's going to be burnt, we look at it as if it's burnt. This is what this opinion holds in Rashi. And therefore, if it's burnt, now the lulav has to have a certain size. Lulav has to be at least 4 tefachim high, at least about 15 inches or so high. So if it's burnt, there's no height, there's nothing there. So therefore, in contrast to the other avodah zarah, which is not the Asherah avodah zarah, if the guy would worship this lulav, not from the Asherah, not from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu going into the land of Israel with those Asherah trees, just today, so that you can't have benefit from the thing. It doesn't seem like it has to be burnt. You can't benefit. You can't have any use from it. You can't go ahead and use it for your fire, for your for your barbecue. You can't use it. You can't sweep the floor with it or whatever because you want to use it as a broom. You can't have benefit from it, but not necessarily it has to be burnt. But the thing that has to be burnt is that's what the Mishnah is talking about. The Asherah. I said it has to be burnt. It's missing a size. Missing a size, it's not kosher. Just like if you have a lulav that's too small, too short, it's not kosher. This is too short. Okay, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day, and everyone remember Baruch Aleinu. We got to remember Baruch Aleinu. Not only we got to remember, we should take responsibility to encourage others, remind others, send it in your family. If you have a chat, send it in the chat. You reminding everybody. Maybe someone has relatives that might not be at shul every day, and when you're not in shul, you're not in it to wait to know everything what's going on. That's what I believe. You got to be in it to win it. So
Thank you, Rabbi.
Jaime, I'm challenging you, Jaime. My challenge is that to remind everybody, some of your chats, whatever chat, if you're
right
involved
now,
in
family chat right now. Thank you, Rabbi.
Family chat, Baruch Aleinu. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.